Today, I'm pretty excited because I've gotten like dozens and dozens of questions about all the zoning and code changes that are coming to Seattle and really every major city that has more than 75,000 people or so in Washington. So we're going to be covering that today. I'm sure David will talk a little bit about the build process that he's going through, about the new code, and then of course if there are like ROI financing questions, Kara and I will jump in as well. So this is going to be pretty collaborative. I know there's a billion questions about the new code, and then full disclosure, we're all figuring out this new code together. So whether you're talking to City of Seattle and they're contradicting themselves, or whether you're talking to a builder or an architect and they're saying things that seem like they might be right, but you're not sure, like I think this is one of those times where everything is changing. So take everything you hear with a grain of salt and verify and trust but verify all these sources, because a lot of people might not know as much about this as they did the old code. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in that, right? Once markets get saturated, as they have for DADUs, anytime that there's a big change, a big code change, a big market shift, that creates new opportunities. So I'm pretty excited to figure out what those new opportunities are with all y'all. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up David Weisser. He's a builder. He's built DADUs for me and I know other people in the room. And it's just an awesome resource for all of these questions around the new code. So let's give him a round of applause.
Yeah, as far as the new code, a lot of it is going to be subject to actually permitting things and seeing how the city like interprets their own code. So when we have these big code changes, a lot of times you can read the code and it can seem a little confusing. And honestly, like Michael was saying, I've chatted with the city trying to get clarity on what the implications of the code are in this scenario and this scenario, and you actually get conflicting information from the city. So, which is frustrating, but that's what we're dealing with. Over time, as things start to get permitted and we see how Seattle is interpreting their code, there's gonna be more and more clarity because it will set precedent and things like that. But kind of on a general level, I have a bunch of things to talk about in regards to most likely you're going to be able to do, depending on if it's an ADU scenario or a duplex, whether you're building something under the HB 1337 provisions or the HB 1110 provisions. I've been able to gather enough information that should be pretty accurate and how it's going to affect how you guys might decide to develop. So let's, so for our company, we've primarily built projects that are utilizing the ADU code. So now with HB 1110, you're going to be able to build up to 4 to 6 units. Where if you're doing the DADU play, you have an SFR plus, now you can do detached or have an attached, detached. So everything we've done so far has been DADUs, and we do projects where sometimes the primary residence becomes the DADU, and then you build a new SFR in the backyard and with an attached ADU. So we do a lot of single DADUs, and then we do projects where new SFR with attached ADU. So that's primarily what we've done so far. So now there's other types of opportunities as far as what you're going to build, but that move out of kind of the DADU realm and then get into duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, sixplexes. And there are other codes that come into play that are potentially going to increase your risk and your exposure, capital, things like that. And so there's just a lot of things to think about, whether I'm going to keep it simple and just do a single DADU, or do 2 DADUs, or no, I'm going to maximize this property and go bigger. There are 2 different games, and the requirements for both. When you go bigger, there's more things that the city can do that are going to be potentially have big financial surprises, and so your risk level is different depending on what you're going to do, what route you're going to go. So I have a few things that I did that kind of breaks it down, the big major things. So let me just start with things that have changed for the DADU play. The couple of big things that have changed for the DADU play is now you in Seattle, And keep in mind that I'm talking about Seattle with all of this, because Seattle has some provisions that are in addition to HB 1337 and 1110. So this is, everything that I'm sharing is for Seattle. I got information, if you have questions in general for Washington, I probably can answer some of those, but these are going to be specifically for Seattle. So in Seattle, so now you can do 2 detached. The big thing that has changed for DADUs is now you can go 32 feet plus 5 for a pitched roof, so 37 feet, which is the height restrictions for the SFR. So now your DADU can actually match the height restrictions. Before it was roughly around 23 feet, which limited you to 2 stories. So now you can actually go 3 stories, which is a really big deal. Because if you're working within the confinements of your lot coverage, if you can go a 3rd story, then you can, on some cases, you can get your 1,000 square feet. So that's a big game changer. The other one that's really big is now you can have your 2 detached ADUs attached. So you can have, essentially it's a duplex, but it's called 2 DADUs attached to each other. So you can have the SFR, and then you can have essentially a duplex, and you still fall under the ADU code, which is a really big deal. So that's a game changer for us, because by being able to put them together, you're really reducing, you're expanding the amount of space you have to work with. So if you have 2 detached, typically you're going to want 5 or 10 feet in between the units, minimum 5. And then you're dealing with setbacks on each side. If you can combine them, you actually open up a lot more space to work with, depending on your lot and the scenario. So I'm really excited about that. We're trying to figure out right now what the market is going to want when it comes to if you're going to go the route of 2 DADUs. I'm guessing that eventually what's going to make the most sense is having like a duplex scenario where you have 2 attached, garages below, so you get both your garages, and you're going 3 stories. Is my guess is kind of what, the most bang for your buck and the best use for your property. On the old code, usually we were, the best use was to do like our HOS model, or the ARES, which is similar, which is 1,000 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, 1-car garage, and that almost always maxed you out. Now we're going to go into a couple more things. You can do more, and so it's going to change what's the best use of your property. So the other big thing that has changed, and Seattle, the way they write their code is kind of weird on this, but I've checked with the city and got full clarity. There has been conflicting information, but if you have 3 units, you can go to 50% lot coverage. So before it was 35%. Now if you have 3 units, you can go to 50%, which is a big deal, because right now when we run feasibilities, almost all of our feasibilities that we have run over the last couple of years, where typically we have about 500 to 750 square feet of additional lot coverage allowed. At 35%, usually when you count in the house and you take down the garage, it leaves 500 to 750. That's enough for either a schooner model, which is like 540 square foot footprint, or a HOS model, which is 750 square feet. Most lots, that's where we landed. So now at 50%, like you're gonna be able to get 2 units. You would not be able to, if you were stuck at 35%, you were not gonna be able to get 2 units. So now you're gonna be able to get 2, and you can go higher too. So it's really gonna allow a lot more to fit within those requirements. So excited about that. So let's see, so they have, with the new code, Seattle's new code, and just FYI, with Seattle's new code, they're in what's called their interim code. So they came out with code where they needed to comply with HB 1337 and 1110. So it's kind of like their emergency code, and they're still that code. So now they're compliant, but there actually still is going to be more changes to that code. Potentially, they may have wrapped that up in the next couple months. That's their projections. Maybe that means times it by 5. I don't know. But anyway, so right now we're in if you talk to Seattle, they refer to it as the interim code. So as far as zoning changes and things like that, which I know a lot of people here are interested in, and Seattle has their planned zoning changes, but none of that is set in stone until they are out of the interim code and they pass their final code. So we're still waiting on that. But so as far as the ADU play, so we got our 32-foot height now. We can attach, and now they're saying, so it's 1,000 square feet, and they're saying you can have a 250 square foot garage. And so before you could have as big of a garage as you want if you stayed within the lot coverage, but now they're saying you can have a 250 square foot garage, which is one garage bay. But what's interesting is they say plus external storage. And they're apparently, so far we haven't found in the code the limits of external storage. So I don't know I don't know. We are in the interim code, so I mean, capitalize on that now, I guess. But we haven't found any restrictions as far as, so I mean, you could have maybe a 3-bay garage as your external storage. I don't know, but that's the way it's written right now. So those are the big changes. And with HB 1337, I didn't see a lot of this in Seattle with ADUs, but they did have the ability to do it. They can't force frontage improvements on ADU development, which is a big deal because when you get into other development, that's the kind of thing you may have to contend with, are frontage improvements. So they can't make you replace the curb and gutter on the outside, the sidewalk, storm drain extensions, or improvements on the front of the street. When you're with the DADU play, you don't. They can't force you to do that, which is a big deal because those are the types of things that really can throw off a project when you have those type of expenditures, which could be $60,000 to $100,000, depending on what they're having you do. So that is the DADU play and how it's changed. It's gotten a lot better. We build a lot of DADUs. I like the DADU play. Most of my clients are like entry-level real estate investors, and they're getting into their first project, their first couple projects. DADUs are really, it's a lower risk, lower bar to entry investment. If you're doing an investment for the first time and you're doing a 4-plex, 6-plex, and you're subject to all these other codes, like it's pretty risky. It's really risky. It's less controlled. When you're building these DADUs, it's much more controlled, much predictable. You know for the most part where your variables are and what your margin of error is. It's a different game when you go bigger. So that's a big deal, not being subject to any sort of frontage improvements when you're building DADUs. So that's DADUs. Now let's get into the provisions of HB 1110. So now in residential zones, you can build up to 4 to 6 units. 6 units if you're a quarter mile from a major transit. It's either and or one of the units is low income. But so you're up to 4 to 6 units. Side note, right now a part of it, after this interim code, it's looking like Seattle potentially is going to designate like 30 different residential zones. What do they call them? They call them neighborhood centers, where in those different neighborhood centers all throughout Seattle, there are going to be, in neighborhood residential, those zones, you're going to actually be able to go bigger, like up like 4 to 6 stories on some of these. So right now in neighborhood residential, you're capped at that 32 plus 5, which is 3 stories. Potentially, if they do pass this in some of these neighborhood zones, if they rezone them as such, you're going to be able to go a lot bigger. So outside of the ADU code, so now it's 4 to 6 units on a lot. You're still going to have to work within the lot coverage requirements. But I mean, so you can have different combinations. You get duplex, triplex. You can have another SFR plus an ADU. You could have existing SFR, ADU, new SFR, ADU. There's a bunch of different combinations. But so you can go bigger once you get into like another SFR or duplex, triplex. Like I said, you're now subject to other codes. So these are some of the things that you're going to be subject to if you get into that type of development. So one, like we mentioned, is frontage improvements. So Seattle could come and say like, hey, we need you to replace the sidewalk from the corner of the street, to the other corner of the street or to your property, things like that. They have the ability to do that, to force those. They could require that you, in order to drain on your site with storm drainage, they could require you to add a storm line in the street, or go all the way up the street and connect to the existing storm line on an adjacent street. So those are things they can do, and those things are things that get expensive very fast. When it comes to water hookup and additional water meters, same thing. Infrastructure in the right of way up the street is very, very expensive. A lot of times it's like, from a development standpoint, you just don't, unless you've done this 100 times, it can be hard to predict, especially when you're newer at this. And so when you get into these things, you got to have that margin of error in your deal, because if you've got to spend $60,000 to go up the street, if that puts you underwater on your deal, you're going to be in trouble. So, so let's see here. So 4 to 6 units allowed. So a couple things that you need to think about when you go bigger is if you have 4 or more units in a single structure, you're subject to the IBC code and no longer to the residential code. So if you're 4 or more in one structure, which is basically a fourplex, you're subject to IBC. The main I have not worked with IBC code in a long time. That's the International Building Code. So you're not dealing with residential code. Some of the big things that are going to impact that is sprinklers. You're going to be required to do a sprinkler system, which is going to be bringing in a sprinkler system depending on the infrastructure already in the street. Regardless, it's going to be expensive, but you are subject to that. So that's the main one. The other one is you're going to have ADA requirements. I believe it would be at least on one unit. I'm not exactly sure how you handle it, but when you get into IBC, you're subject to ADA. So whether that's ramps, accessible entries, just kind of depends. But you're going to have to meet ADA code. So you got the change in the type of code that you're using. As far as like utilities with Seattle City Light, if you have 4 or more units, they force you to go underground with your power. So right now, when we build these single DADUs, or we're dealing with 3, we can swing from the pole, whether that's from the front of the property or the back. From there, we go underground on site and then service the ADUs or the new SFR. But if they make you go underground in the right of way, that gets very expensive because you're subject to all their requirements on how that's done. You got to go and tear up the street. I mean, even if you had to go half a block and go underground for power, you're probably looking at like $40,000, if not more. So if you're going to do 4, you will have to go underground. So that's something to think about too. And that's not that could happen to you. They will make you go underground. Let's see here. So we talked about, so that's the, so those are the main distinctions between the two, and then I'll open this up to questions in a second. But it's a different game. So as you're getting into this, you need to understand, if you decide to go bigger, like it's just going to open you up to more. Your learning curve is going to be steeper, a lot steeper, and just you're going to make sure you got the funds to cover something like that. I love the ADUs. We build primarily ADUs, and I just love it because it's obviously harder and harder now to get a lot where you can build a DADU. It's getting more challenging because so many people do it. But from a risk standpoint, it's such a great way to go. Because from permitting standpoint, we can get, now permitting is actually it's getting pretty long, but we're typically right now, we're at about 6 months roughly. Sometimes it can be up to 8 months for permitting. We take about roughly 6 months to build our DADUs, give or take, but it's usually almost right around there. So we're typically in it for a year. If you go bigger, you're in it like most likely 2+ years to get permitted. 2 to 3 years to get permitted, built, and exit. So, but yeah, as far as the changes in zoning on Seattle's like One Seattle neighborhood residential zoning. They have a GIS map, and you can go on there. I haven't spent a lot of time on it. I know some of you, I know a lot of people are holding on to properties waiting for the change. So they have some proposed stuff on there. Nothing's for certain yet until it's all voted on and they push that through, which will be coming once we're out of this interim code. But you can go on there and look at that. I know some people are just holding out until they know whether they're going to get upzoned. The reason if they get upzoned, then they can go bigger. Right now, with so that's the difference there. So we'll know that soon. If some of you are looking to go bigger, there's a chance that your neighborhood you may be rezoned. So okay, that's mainly what I've got. I'm going to open up to questions. Is there anything you want to add real quick, Michael, to any of that before we get into questions?
Yeah, why does this all matter is the part that we kind of skipped ahead of because we got a late start and I wanted to get David up here ASAP. And there's like a lot of reasons why this all matters. So I'm interested to hear, obviously a lot of people probably came into this room without knowing a lot about the House bills that passed, over a year and a half ago, I think now. And then also the One Seattle Code, which is really brand spanking new. Depending on who you are, it probably matters for different reasons. If you're sitting on a big single family home in an established neighborhood like Queen Anne, it matters because people are going to be building up in those neighborhoods. And you may already be a little bit unhappy with the density at 2 stories tall. And I'm sure that a lot of those people are going to be even more unhappy once they start building up and blocking views and otherwise getting more visible. So that's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, I see a lot of young people in the room. It matters because one of the reasons that house prices have not gone up as quickly in the last few years as they have before COVID is interest rates, but another big reason is supply. Like we have a lot of small 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 3-bed houses that are a lot easier and cheaper to build than they used to be. And that's keeping the starter home price not at a reasonable 700 to 800,000, but at least at an achievable 700 to 800,000, which is pretty incredible that it's kind of stabilized there. And I think that's a good thing if it stabilizes there, because no one wants to live in an area where starter homes are $1 million. Like it just doesn't make sense. Even just saying starter home for $1 million like feels weird in my mouth to say it. So I'm curious kind of what people see as like why they're here, why they're interested, what they're hoping to do with the code, what the opportunities they see are, what projects they're considering, what questions they have, and then maybe David can talk to the building side and I can talk to the like resale and rental side, and Kara can talk to the financing side, and we can really kind of like hash this out together. Who's got questions, comments? Yeah.
Okay, so first question, previously in the code there was some exception. For instance, one of the exception was if you build the greenhouse, like
build green.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're gonna get extra height for the house. With the new code, what are the exceptions they provide? Did you change something regarding?
As far as built green and any additional provisions, I'm not aware of those. Right now, from a height standpoint, you can go 32, so that's not a restriction anymore. Primarily when we've done built green, it's because we're required to, because the code, and I assume this is probably is the same, the second DADU has to be built green or low income. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so whether it's the first one is an converted ADU in the basement, there's a lot of times we run into that where we do feasibility and we find out the basement is a registered ADU. That means when we build the DADU, it's got to be built green. But as far as any provision, primarily we've been forced to it. As far as additional height requirements, we never really have utilized those. But as far as that specific one, we got 32 plus 5 now.
And build green is interesting, right, David? Because there's building green, which is the action of building in a sustainable way. And then there's the built green certification, which is a bunch of check boxes that add some cost to your construction, even if you were going to do those things anyway.
Yep. Yeah. So built green, it's a whole bunch of administrative things that you've got to do and say and make sure you're doing it. You have to actually hire a certified engineer to do your inspections. So Drew, I think we're like right now at $3,500 that we're charging, I believe, for So we're charging about, when we have to do built green, we're charging roughly around $3,500 to do that. So it's not terrible.
And that's just for the administrative load. That's not for any change in the construction.
Well, there's actually not, surprisingly, initially I thought that there's not actually a lot we need to change from a built green standpoint. Yeah. So if you're thinking I'm going to be super green, and energy efficient, that's not really what it means. Yeah. Like for us, we have to be where we take our waste has to go to a certified place where we take our waste. We have to get just additional special inspections for different type of insulating type things to make sure that they're done. Like we do mini splits. A lot of times we do mini splits in all the bedrooms, so that actually hits a bunch of points. So there's a couple of things that we actually already do that gets us, and then from there it's a lot of administrative stuff, saying that we're doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
So, yes.
In cases where people are trying to maximize and do whatever for emissions, do you see them adding MHA fees to those?
That's going to be based on your zone. So MHA is based. Yeah. So if you're in an MHA zone, you're gonna have that. I'm not aware of anything that if you get between a certain amount of units that you have MHA. I think it's just based on zoning.
Yeah, and you'll see the suffix or the suffix right there.
It'll be an M suffix.
1, 2, 3, and then there's a table that you can look up, and it's all by square footage, so it should be pretty much whatever you build. Right? Yeah.
So the way it works, I mean, when I've looked into, and you can pay it all at once, or you can amortize it over years. I think a lot of developers, they just pay it.
Yeah.
But like I've looked at in those type of zones that were zoned, just building like a 1,000 or square foot or like a 15-foot SFR, I think the fees were like $40,000 or something like that. Yeah, so they're most of the time it's a deal killer for, like if you're going MHA, usually they're larger developments. Yeah. And not all those zones are MHA. Like when you're in low high rise or things like that, they're not all. I don't believe they're all.
No, although I've been pretty disappointed with where MHA is, because it definitely has hit like the CD and Beacon Hill and South Park, some neighborhoods where I've lived and worked that are just not terribly high price point. Yeah. And unfortunately, the price is based on your square footage, not based on the resale value of the house.
Yep.
So South Park is a great example. There's tons of RSL M, which is MHA. RSL is already a zoning that's really difficult for people to work with because it's this awkward like middle ground between single family and LR. And South Park is South Park, so the values are a little bit lower than a lot of other areas of Seattle. Now we've got an additional $40K that we're paying, and it's just like really tough. There's a reason why there's a lot of homes that are falling down in South Park. It's because the developers don't want them, which is bad for everyone.
Yep. Yeah. You had a question in the back?
Yeah, back on the built green, if you have a single family residence and a DADU already, and you have room for another detached, are you under the new code that was just adopted, that has to be documented built green?
Yeah, I haven't looked into that new code. I'm sure it's the same. I doubt it's changed. Under the previous code, I haven't looked into that one specifically, but yeah, under the previous code, in that situation, it would have to be built green. It's the second one that has to be, so which was done first, when you do, even if it's already been done.
Yes, so you mentioned that with the interim code, some of the things are not specified, so it might be good to take advantage of that. So with like the final one, that's probably gonna come out in winter, probably it sounds like not need more use. So like, should we wait or not? Sounds like there's pros and cons of each.
Yeah, I don't know that there's really like I mentioned, there was that kind of, seems like there's a loophole with the external storage, I don't know if I'd base your investment decision off of that. And the thing is, they could adopt the new code really soon. So you'd have to time that right. I'm assuming that it's going to get better and less restrictive. Yeah, maybe if there's a loophole, it would close, but I don't know that trying to take advantage of a loophole right now is going to, in such a short time, is going to really help you.
Yeah, I think the more common question I've been getting a lot of is, I'm in the permitting process under the old code and now the new code is here. Should I scrap
Oh, you mean
Or-
like pre-interim code?
Pre and interim code. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
not Christy's question, but an
Yeah, I
interesting
have
question
some
is-
clients that we've had deposits and they were just about to get approved and they canceled their permits
Yeah.
because they want to go and do something different,
Yeah.
do an additional. And I'm not sure what he's going to do. He'll probably do 2 detached instead of 1.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do have clients that are now pulling out to do something different. But as far as I don't know, I'm not in contact with a ton of people from the city, and my assumption would be that it's not going to get worse.
But it's not gonna be that much different.
Yeah, well, Seattle had to comply with HB 1337 and 1110, so it was kind of like their emergency code to comply, and then from there it's kind of working out all the kind of things that around that. I mean, they are going to be talking about loopholes and trying to figure out. So we'll see. I don't know for sure though. I'm not in those meetings and those council meetings and who's trying to push what. I know there's I forget who it is that's trying to push a tree thing. I forget who it is, but yeah, it's. But right now they submitted their final amendments, and so I don't believe they can go back right now and add any more amendments. It's a matter of dealing with what has been sent and approving or not approving certain things of that. So I believe that's what's going on right now.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were taught rethinking about your DADU house model to potentially go up to 3 stories. But if we're still having a maximum of 1,000 square feet, which is how DADU is defined, and wouldn't the stairs take up a lot of the space by going, 3 stories?
Yeah, the stairs will take some, and I haven't fully kind of started our design process. I'm trying to figure out what I think the market wants before we spend a bunch of money on design. So we've been playing with it a little bit, but I'm thinking that you're gonna have a garage, and a stairs up to your next floor and a stairs up to your next floor, because that full bottom floor, that'd have to be 250. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to look, but my guess. What do you think? Do you think it's gonna go 3-story garages below, or?
And in that scenario, the garage would count as one of the stories, or are you saying garage?
Yeah, no, the
grade,
garage would count as one of the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would know better than me the cost to move dirt, but I've always tried to avoid moving dirt in any project, which means above grade garages, not below grade.
No, I'm not talking about below grade. I'm thinking it's going to go 3-story. It's going to be first story is garage.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 stories after that.
Yeah, I mean, the most common townhouse layout right now in Seattle is 3 stories, either with a garage or without a garage, and that usually there's a garage that results in a very small den style bedroom on the ground floor, and then it has living on the middle floor, and then it has 2 bedrooms, usually a primary suite and maybe a kid's bedroom, or sometimes a dual primary upstairs, and then a rooftop deck. So for me, that layout typically runs you 1,100 to 1,300 square feet, maybe 1,450 on the high end, and they are narrow. So I just think it's gonna probably be kind of townhousey.
Yep. Yeah.
I think the cool opportunity is that maybe people will get a little bit more creative with it.
Yeah.
Which I think is about time for. When I met David and I talked a little bit about this, and David said something that stuck with me. This was back in my cabin days when hardly anyone was building DADUs except for my cabin, and they had their little, here are your 3 options. And he said, I feel like in 20 years, people are gonna look back at these builds and they're gonna say, that was from the crappy DADU build, the crappy DADU boom of the 2020s. What were they thinking? So I do think there's a cool opportunity with the new code, maybe for us to get a little bit more sophisticated with our build layouts, and make stuff that feels like it has longevity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also make stuff that's different than what's on the market, right? Because I think it would be a little bit of a shame if we just built more townhouses. And as someone that has a lot of townhouse listings and grinding to try and get these things sold, that's not what the market wants, right? There are enough townhouses on the market.
You said the new garage size is now limited to 250.
Yeah, that's what they say.
It seems like it would make a lot more sense for it to be 500, because then you could go a big garage on the bottom.
Yeah.
500 to 1,000.
I haven't run a lot of new feasibilities under the new code. On the old code, I've run so many feasibility studies, so I'm very familiar with what fits and what doesn't fit. So my guess is going more than 250 in a garage, if you're going to have 2 on a unit, it's not going to fit from a lot coverage standpoint.
Oh, yeah, because your footprint would be close to 1,000.
Yeah, because you're going to have to limit your footprint. So I just haven't done a ton of feasibilities with
But
it.
then you're going to go up to the 50%.
Yeah. So you just, as long as you can make it within that 50%, then you're going to be good. So there's going to be, we'll see how it shakes out. On the prior code, it was almost every lot in Seattle, almost, I would say 80%, 85% of the feasibilities we do, you got additional 500 to 750. And so we just they almost all come, and that's 2 options to build. So it'd be interesting to see as we start to flush it out and kind of see what is, on the average lot, what you're able to get. But
That feels like closing a loophole to me too, truthfully, because most of these builds that are serious garages are 1-car garages anyway. I've seen a couple of 2-car garages, usually with like a rooftop over the 2-car. But I have seen a lot of 4-car garages where it's 2,000 square feet and it's like 1,000 square foot garage on the bottom level and then 1,000 square feet living space above. And the city has bigger fish to fry and has a lot of permits to go through, but you have to believe the city knows that that's not 1,000 square foot garage. That's a duplex that's going to get converted by the investor after the fact. And I know that a lot of them that have been. So that maybe it shouldn't have been 250, but I feel like maybe that may have been a targeted code change to get rid of the loophole.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, totally. And they're trying to, even if it was used for parking, they're trying to move towards density.
Yeah.
So they're not going to want people building 3-car garages.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's all their intent with the code changes is to decrease density. So everything's being shaped around how do we get the maximum amount of development in these different zones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would something like a stacked lot, could that be considered 2 detached, or do they have to be attached? Would a vertical wall to be considered
No.
attached?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know yet. I have not looked into that. I would imagine that it could be vertical or horizontal. I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
So that wouldn't automatically put it in duplex territory. It could be 2 yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially a duplex. It's not being permitted as a duplex, right? It's the same thing. So, yeah, I haven't seen any limitations on what you can or how that's split up.
Just maybe you guys can comment, expand on maybe what the market is interested in. Because I think it was mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of DADUs coming onto the market, and a lot of them are off sort of these pre-built plans, or there's a certain playbook. Regardless of what the code changes, I'm sure it's going to bring a lot more sort of variables that we can do. But in terms of what buyers are looking for, can you comment a little bit on what you think there's a little bit too much of in the market right now, what they're looking for in terms of differentiation, and specifically about sort of green or efficiency buildings? Do people are they willing to pay a premium for a very efficient house in terms of energy usage and stuff like this, or is it just not something on their radar? It's just they just it costs more to build certainly, but are you getting return on it just from a monetary perspective?
Yeah, I'll let you. I've never had any investor that wants to build super efficient if it costs 20% more. So I haven't. I've not had one. So.
Yeah, I touched on this. So I'm a real estate agent primarily, and a real estate investor. So I build these to hold a lot, but I do a lot of client work with purchasing these projects and then listing these projects. And on the one side of the spectrum, you have people like me and Thatch that are essentially encouraging people to hold everything, because Thatch has held stuff since the 80s, and of course it's appreciated a ton since then. I've been trying to hold real estate since about 10 years ago and have also done pretty well on the last 10-year run. When you look at the last few years, though, and of course extrapolate that out if you think it's going to continue because of high interest rates, which is a good Kara question to kick it over to the financing side. There are people like Augie Bukowski, who is a developer and a lender, who sells everything. And the reason he sells everything is because, like, he makes a good point. Back in 2022, what was a DADU selling for? $725 on average. Today, what is a DADU selling for? $725 on average. Like, we haven't really seen any price movement in DADUs. The only price movement we've seen is from people building larger. Back when this code was new, like, people were not taking advantage of the loopholes the way they are now, and also just weren't doing as sophisticated builds. So when we see like 800K sales, 850K sales, that's not from appreciation in the DADU product. It's from more sophisticated builds and higher cost builds in better neighborhoods. So I think the market wants more housing, but I also think that there are a lot of developers who think the DADU code is just a way to just pump out kind of pretty generic homes and sell them. And you will still sell them for $725,000 or more. But as build costs go up, like, it's a good question for David, kind of how much build costs have crept up on him in the last 3 years. If prices stay the same, at some point we may reach a point where these projects look less appealing, or maybe something needs to change to make them more appealing to buyers so they're willing to pay more similar to single family home prices. How much do you think from 2021, 2022 build costs have crept up on you from inflation and everything else?
Well, I know right now in the last month, we've seen a lot of price increases.
Yeah.
Like as far as copper, like our MEPs, our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, on some of our projects, like a schooner, those have gone up like $20,000.
Yeah.
From I would say, like, say a schooner from
Schooner's 1,000 square feet, two bed.
Now, from a couple of years ago, it's probably like around $40,000, $50,000 more.
Yeah, so 15% or so
like
increase.
that,
Yeah, which is fine if prices are ticking up as well, but if they aren't, I think it starts to pose a problem. It's interesting. So when interest rates ticked up and the market slowed down, I made the prediction that our business, HouseHack Seattle, would be like the most in vogue popular thing in the world, right? Like, everyone would want a house hack because no one would be able to afford, or if they could afford, justify living in a regular home with a $7,000 mortgage. And kind of the opposite has happened. Like, people have been less interested in investing, or at least holding rentals, more interested in flipping. People have been less interested in house hacking in my experience, and one of the reasons may be because they're spending so much for these houses on a payment basis that they don't feel like they should have to compromise by having roommates. So I do like the idea of the individual investor getting into these DADU projects, but I also think that we may reach a point where there's a lot more big developers building them, and maybe building them in a little bit more sophisticated way.
Yeah.
Because individual investors are already like kind of getting less interested in real estate investing than they were during COVID. And also, I think they're going to start getting hammered because the products that they're building may be a little bit basic, and there's a lot on the market. So those basic DADUs may not sell as well as they'd hoped. Yeah.
What do you mean by basic DADUs?
Basic as in like a very
Ugly.
Yeah, a very kind of off-the-shelf appliance package and layout, and
Yeah.
The
Like
Bed
I-
Bath and Beyond. The Bed Bath and Beyond she sheds.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so like our Haas model, people that walk in our Haas model, they just like love it, and just the layout and the higher ceilings, and just so we put a lot of thought into how this thing feels. I mean, I've just been in a lot of DADUs. Like, you walk in, it's like you know, get depressed. So, anyways, and we'll see as kind of as years go by, like how these are, like our model is performing on the market. But it's from a design aesthetic, from a layout, with ceilings and things like that. Like that's what Michael's talking about. It's much different than like the cookie cutter, you know, boxy DADUs. So
yeah, trying to create something. The reason single family homes have done pretty well in every market in Seattle is because each one is very different. And when people love a single family home, they typically love that single family home.
Yeah.
And it's not a substitutable product,
Yeah.
right? Like people are willing to fight for a single family home because they feel like it's their opportunity to get that home. And that's not the way that most buyers think about condos, townhomes, and DADUs. They're a little bit more like a commodity where people are less willing to fight for them, less willing to pay more because they feel like they could just wait and get another one later. So I think that's the biggest opportunity is, can you create something that really is a single family home under the new code if you're selling it? And then if you're keeping it as a rental, can you, like to our point about rising build costs and rents have not gone up that much in the last few years, can you take advantage of the new code to push some kind of efficiency where you get back the cash flow that we were seeing during COVID and lower interest rates through maybe better density, better unit count for the same build costs? Like that's the opportunity I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the presentation, David. And I think attaching like the two DADUs is going to be a huge game changer for sure. Question on the construction side of things. Is it going to be more difficult, more costly when they're attached together? Like, will there be a different set of codes since there's going to be a shared wall?
Yeah, it'll be cheaper. There are things that cost more. You will have to do a 1 hour rated wall. It's not between the two, which is not going to be significant from a cost standpoint. But anytime we're building, one foundation, and one roof versus, two foundations and two roofs, it does bring the cost down per square foot for sure.
Do you know roughly the percentage, like how much you can optimize?
I mean, I have to do the math based on size. We haven't built DADUs that way. Like we build like new SFRs with attached ADUs, and the square foot price on that is like 310, 300. Sometimes you can get down to like 280 per square foot. Not livable, but just square foot construction. A single DADU, it gets up closer to 400, 400 plus. So, it's cheaper. So I don't know I haven't priced something out like that yet, so I'm not sure where. But that's kind of the range of where you're probably going to be in the middle somewhere between those two.
Thanks.
Yeah. One thing to think about that I just thought of, who was it that was building a schooner in here? You guys are permitting a schooner. I didn't think about this when I gave you our schooner pricing. So with the new energy code, the 2021 energy code was implemented. 5 dot now is their new schooner. They're going with a 2-inch rigid insulation, continuous insulation around the entire exterior so the cost price on that is actually going up quite a bit. To do that, I think with the 2-inch, like with the 1/2-inch, we're like another $6,000. I think we're like another 12 to 15, maybe 20 in some situations to deal with that exterior insulation. So as far as our model, in-house model, we redesigned it, and we actually don't have to do any exterior insulation. So I wanted to mention that if you guys are working with other architects and they're designing, a lot of architects will just go with prescriptive code, which you have prescriptive code for your walls, for your floor, and for your roof. Well, you can also go a calculated approach, which takes factors in the view values and R values of your entire building. So your windows, your doors, how many windows do you have, how big are they, and you put that all into a calculator. And if you're underneath a threshold, then you can insulate it that way. And so we were able to do that with our Haas model, and the only thing that we had to change was to do blow-in bad insulations for the wall, and then do more foam in the slab, and it's saving, it's saving probably $12,000-$15,000 on that build. But a lot of architects, they just go with prescriptive. So we're seeing a lot of stuff come. I'm like, ugh, or it won't be designed that way, and then we'll bid it, and then it comes back with the final design, and they've added continuous insulation, and we're like, sorry, it's going to be quite a bit more. So that's something to think about if you guys are in the middle of designs, talking to your architects about doing a calculated approach to get away from rigid insulation, because it's expensive to build.
Yeah.
Question about the 3-story units. So these stairs, are they counted towards the square footage or not?
The stairs, we run into it a couple different ways. As far as gross floor area, the stairs do count against it. We've had to go a couple different ways. So it's been done a couple ways on our projects. but typically that's going to count against you. So we had it, sorry, the area, I'm thinking of the area underneath the stairs. We have an issue with the area underneath the stairs where they won't let you attach it to the inside of the house, and we've had to attach it to or access it from the garage, so it's considered part of the garage. So, yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that. My architects do that, but.
And the second question is, with the 3 stories, how does it gonna add to the price of the build? Like 3rd story?
It's not going to be significant. It's going to be cheaper for us for the most part to go 3 stories, which is less foundation, less roof.
Okay, so the foundation cost is going to go up to support the 3rd story?
No, it's not going to really go up for the most part. It's going to be, yeah, for the most part, we're going to be a lower cost for 3 story, or the same, or it doesn't get more expensive. From a scaffolding standpoint around the building, they still got to do scaffolding for 2-story, 3 stories. So it doesn't have much impact if it's not cheaper. One thing to think about, guys, when you're doing feasibility for 3 stories, you're going to have to start contending with high voltage power lines. So that's something you really got to watch out for. So when we run feasibilities, that's one of our things on our feasibility study. We see if there's any high voltage power lines, and then see what our clearance is going to be. For high voltage, you got to be 14 feet. It's a 14-foot radius around the wire. So typically your high voltage power lines, when you have a pole, you have wires that are big fat black ones, kind of more mid. At the very top, usually you have a very skinny wire. It's almost like a silver wire. It's at the very top of your pole, just one single wire. That's your high voltage. So when you go 3 stories, you're actually getting about to the height of that wire, which means you're going to have to be 14 feet away. So if you were intending to build right on the alley, typically the poles are right on the alley. If you go up, you're not going to be able to build right there. Essentially, if you're 3-story, you're going to have to be 14 feet away from the alley. Now, if you were 2-story, then it gets closer to you're around 8-ish feet away from the alley, because you're only 2 stories. So you come in 8 feet from the alley, typically you're going to be about 14 feet away from that line. So that would be a big gotcha if you're careful. So high voltage lines. The service lines, that's different. That's like 5 feet, so it's not that big of a deal. Usually we don't have an issue with that. But we had a project that we did where literally they didn't want to be 10 feet closer to the primary residence because then they would have to fire rate. And then it ended up being exactly 10 feet away from the SFR and 14 feet away, 14 feet, 6 inches from the power line, from a radius. So anyways, but that's from a feasibility standpoint, watch out for that if you're starting to build higher. If you're buying lots, make sure you're looking at that.
What is the solution for that? Can we move the high voltage or?
No, that wire's not going anywhere. And you know what's really interesting now, this is a new thing, SCL, Seattle City Light, is actually providing comments on submittals. So we have a project that we're permitting right now, and when we designed it, so this would be the primary residence, existing SFR became the DADU, and then we built the new SFR with an attached ADU. So we're just finishing the design. And at the very end, after we'd gone through 2 rounds of comments or 3, SEL came in and said that we needed to verify exactly where that wire is and make sure there was no sag in the wire, and I've never, SEL typically in any of these kind of developments doesn't weigh in. So that must be a new thing. I'm not sure what changed, but now they're looking at that stuff. Where prior, we made sure that we complied so we didn't ever have an issue, and they came back and said, you got to move your building. But now they're actually, it must be a new thing with the new code that they're starting to, probably for that reason, because you're going to be, people are going to be building a lot of 3 stories, and that's probably going to become a thing. So, yeah.
So there was a conversation earlier about for these kind of projects, whether you hold and you sort of rent them out and then let them appreciate, or you flip them. In terms of when you do construction or when you hit the finishes and everything like this, but just can you comment on that? What decisions would you make, for example, on a whole project that you wouldn't make on a flip project? And would you do the electrical different? Would you take a different type of floor? But generally, is there a difference between when you build?
Yeah, I'll let you answer that. we typically, so when we give out a proposal, we attach our finish schedule, and we have kind of a middle of the road, mid-grade products for everything, and they're kind of the higher end of mid-grade, but with good, decent pricing. So we've really sourced materials like, we really like this floor, and it's also, we can get a good price for it, and it's a good floor. So we pretty much stick with ours, whether our clients are holding. And in a single DADU, there's not a big fluctuation, I think, going from a little higher grade to lower grade when you get to the finish point, unless you're putting really expensive plumbing fixtures in. Anyways, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I'll talk to that, and I'm curious, Kara, what, from a financing approach, one, how you would structure the financing for a sale versus a hold, and then two, also, as you see these like bigger projects like 2 DADUs, if that changes, what you would do for financing. Because I think that's one of the reasons people love DADUs, is because it's a number that relatively average, obviously upper middle class average people can wrap their head around without being like a hedge fund. But as we start building bigger, like those costs go up too, which can push it out of people's reach. I think there's more room for customization in the sale projects than there is in the rental projects. Like, one interesting thing with the shared wall is how do we bring the cost down on rentals? Because one of the main reasons people aren't renting these is because they are pretty expensive to build. Like, they're less than a single family home, but it's still $300, $350, $400 plus $1,000 to build a DADU, which is a lot of money. The DADUs that have performed really well have generally had like some unique higher end features, and also have some design elements like wallpaper, or like non-white walls, or like non-standard cabinet colors, or like designer tile. Whereas I think for a rental, like, you really can get away with white oak floors, which is, I mean, I do white oak in my home too. I like white oak. White oak floors, subway tile backsplash, quartz countertop, white or gray shaker cabinets. Like, you can go with a more standard palette. And in some ways that's better for rentals, because most tenants are not buying home specific furniture. They're moving their existing furniture in. So like a more neutral palette makes sense. Whereas most owners like kind of want to personalize the space to themselves. So owners will, sell furniture, buy furniture that fits. So you can go a little bit more custom. From a build perspective and from a financing perspective, I'm kind of curious what you guys' thoughts are too.
So from a financing perspective, if somebody I talked to somebody the other day, and they were like, okay, I'm going to take out a hard money, I'm going to build my DADU, I'm going to sell it within our 12 months, because they're hoping everything will run along. And I'm like, well, then you're going to pay short-term capital gains, which crushes you. So if you hold it and rent it, there's multiple ways to get ahead of these high interest rates. And even at high interest rates right now, the amount of loan, so let's say you buy a single family, you build the DADU, then you have to split the lot and condoize both properties. You're gonna have to refinance that front house if you're going to keep or sell the back house. More importantly, the back house you're going to have to. So a lot of times people come into issues with that front house now not having the same value that they maximized out their initial purchase, because it's a smaller lot size and it's a condo instead of a single family home. So you're most likely going to have to split the loans between the two properties to have 2 second parcels, or leverage something else to pay down the loan to make that lot free and clear so you can sell it. So if you're going to hold it, which I typically like to see just as far as a tax advantage and longer term, I'm in Michael's boat. I buy real estate and I hold it. I don't do anything short term, because I think everything's more in a longer term cycle. So to overcome the higher rate to rent ratio, I'm doing a ton of DSCR loans right now. And that could be shocking, but it actually is, because rent to loan payment ratios are about the same, and will go as low as 0.8%, and the rates are about 7.375, which is not horrendous, because that's what rates were for primary residences, 6 months ago?
Yeah.
We also could do a 40-year mortgage, that if you're holding a property long term, you don't really care about the interest you're paying, because it's an immediate tax write-off. And we can throw a prepayment penalty on there for 1, 3, or 5 years to get your rates down into the 6s. So personally, I have a rental property at 7.625. I bought 2 years ago with the HouseHack team. We've been cash flowing it, and I didn't put an insane amount down. You can also put as low as 20% down and still meet those DSCR ratios. So there's so many creative financing ways right now. I mean, even if you're self-employed and you write off everything, you can get a DSCR loan on a 40-year minimum documentation and find a way to cash flow.
Yeah, and that was the situation for my last purchase that I worked with Kara on, is that I am self-employed, and I had a lower year and had a lot of write-offs and didn't qualify for conventional and flipped to DSCR, and I'm doing a 10-year interest-only period, which is kind of cool, followed by a 20-year regular amortized period. So there's also just a lot of creative options available on the DSCR side.
And already we can refi that.
And we can refi it, even though it's
rates have come.
been a year now, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's something, and what I like to do as a lender is I track all my clients' rates. So anytime as an investor, typically investors don't refinance as often because they're just less focused on that property. They like to set and forget it. So which is why the prepayment penalties really make a lot of sense, especially if you're saving 0.5% in interest, and interest rates on investment properties don't move as much because typically they involve points or higher fees.
I think investors are also generally disorganized and have complicated tax situations too. So I know exactly. So for me, it's like, oh my God, I hate refinancing because I need to like figure out.
But a DSCR loan is so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we know you're cash flowing the property, so
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I should say we have 3 entrepreneurs who are running their own businesses up here saying like, oh, we should hold real estate, not flip real estate. To make the argument for flipping real estate, I think that the opportunity for W-2 income earners who truthfully can't really, in the short term, hustle their way to a higher income is there for flipping. So if you're a W-2 earner and you don't want to quit your job, you don't want a new job, working 10 times harder may get you a promotion 9 months from now, but isn't going to 10x your income in the short term. Like flipping DADUs or similar projects is a real opportunity to increase your income. So I think that's the caveat here as well, is that
just hold them for a year to get
Yeah.
the short term.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
a CPA, but
yeah. Yeah, and that's the kind of creativity I think that starts coming in as these strategies get a little bit more mature, right? Is like there's more people trying to build DADUs right now. So how do you, maybe you kick yourself from a 30% income tax rate to a 15% capital gains rate, and that's your competitive edge as the market gets busy. Yeah.
Question to Cara. So if the goal is to sell the main house, so get the permits, can we get, first question, can we get condominiumization if the whole lot under the same mortgage? Will the lender allowed to do or not? No?
so by the book, when you take out your first mortgage with a conventional lender, now going through hard money is total different. But if you're getting a traditional loan, you are signing a deed of trust that says there's a single family residence on X amount of square feet.
Yeah.
So if you go from a single family to a condo, and then you go to the city or to the company and say, well, now I want you to partially reconvey this part of the lot because I want to sell this separately, they're going to look at your title and say, well, you're a condo now, I can call your note due.
Yeah.
So then you'd be forced to refinance or pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why typically I recommend, if you're doing the condo play, kind of just know in the back of your head, you're going to have to refinance that loan because it's a whole different property you're securing with the investor now.
So it's like to be ready to refinance, like if they're gonna catch you, so to speak, or?
I would just, because also think about it this way. I'm giving you $1 million based on 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, how much do you separate for the second unit?
How large are the lots?
20%.
60-40 usually for me.
60-40.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to say, oh yeah, now my $1 million is perfectly secure on 60% of the initial asset. So that's why a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this house, I'm going to put 5% down, I'm going to live in the main house, and my lender will approve me giving away 40% of their asset. Like, no, to me that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but like if the appraisal will match the initial estimate, let's say there's a hop, right? So there was like forced appreciation. So now the main house costs more. So if the this part of the lot will be covered by the appreciated value, is it like negotiable with, let's say, freedom of mortgage freedom mortgage, whatever. So we kind of were lending money with you, and then we moved to the freedom mortgage. So, and I kind of talked to them, and they said like, oh, if you have a permit, we can talk about it. So it's like, is it negotiable?
They have to look at it. Yeah, so they might, let's say I bought a house and a lot, and I was like, oh, I want to just give that lot to my in-laws or something to build on. They might say, yes, that's no problem. But the second hiccup is going to be changing your property type from single family to condo. So then you'd have to deal with that issue as well.
And a lot of the national lenders may not even be thinking about that issue because it is very unique to Seattle.
I can tell you 90% will overpromise.
Yeah.
And then tell you can do it, but once the loan goes from me to the servicer, I have zero control. So I can, but it's gonna bite you at some point because, for instance, another example is, this is a common practice, but a lot of investors buy single families under their personal name and then they put it in an LLC. If something ever flagged that investor that now it's under an LLC and not the personal name, they can call the note due because that does not match the original terms of the loan. Now, a lot of people do it, doesn't get flagged. In this circumstance, it's getting flagged because you're changing lot lines and you're bringing it to their attention.
Yeah.
Does it have any consequences once you flagged?
You just have to refi and get out of the loan.
Yeah, but it's like, you can still, it feels like you still can play it out if you need to refinance. So you kind of like make a condominiumization and then like, okay, if you're gonna call the note, I just have.
And I've done so many refinances where we're going from single family to condo. It's no problem. It hurts the people who are at 3.25%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who aren't expecting it. The people who were at like 7.25, they're like, cool, I don't care. But if they had all these expectations at this mortgage payment when they bought 5 years ago, it burns. Now it's the standard play. I just put it to my clients as expect you're going to have to go through this process.
Yeah. Yeah, can we talk about the 3.25% scenario too? Because I get this question constantly where the single family home was bought in 2020. It's got a crazy low interest rate. It also has equity and people want to build, but they don't have the cash to build. Like what kind of conversations would you have with that?
Build to
Build
keep
to
a
keep.
DADU?
Probably keep
Okay,
the
not
DADU. Because if you
separate.
sell it, either
Yeah.
way, that loan's going away. You
Yeah.
can't, there's no scenario where you, partial reconveyance, but we talked about that
So
already.
it depends on I look at blended rate number one.
Yeah.
So let's say they only owe 300 and they need 450 to build. Then I'm going to say no, just do a cash out refi because you're going to have a higher rate if you take out like a HELOC or
Yeah.
a second.
Yeah.
And it's better just to have a lower blended rate and get rid of your 3.25. If it's like they owe 1.1 and they only need 200, I'll recommend we have a renovation HELOC, which is really beneficial because that will go, if they don't have as much equity, they can use after renovation value
Yeah.
to access that extra equity, or I'll just say take out a standard home equity line. And the good news is the only rate that changes as the Fed is going to start bringing down their rates is the HELOC rate. So if they're getting it at 7 right now, in September, hopefully they cut it, they'll start to see those payments, those
Yeah.
rates come down.
Interesting.
Okay, I wanted to ask, how expensive is the refinancing? Is it about the same price as for like initial loan?
It's kind of up to you, and it's up to the market. Because when I said I track all my clients' rates, what I do is loan amount obviously matters and where the interest rate drop goes. So I have a lot of clients who say we're at 7.25. September was really the last time we saw a decent rate drop. And I brought a lot of clients from 7.25 down to 6.75 for zero cost. Now they could have said, oh no, I want to go with a lower rate, and I could have given them 6.5% for $5,000. But at that time in the market, we thought that rates would continue to come down and they would refinance maybe again in a year or two. So spending $5,000 to save an extra $200 a month or just take the free win at 6.75 was their right call.
Can you explain how does it work with free refinance? What is it?
So you know how you have a base rate, like you're like, I'm going to pay 0 points.
Okay.
That maybe at the time would have been 6.625. And the standard cost to refinance because you have to pay for title,
Yeah.
oftentimes an appraisal, processing and underwriting. So let's say the standard rate to refinance is about $4,000. So that would be at 6.625. You could go down to 6.5 and then pay points and buy it down, or you can do the opposite and you can take a slightly higher rate as a rebate to credit and cover your costs.
You're kind of including it into your loan.
Yes, so you're not getting like, say, the going rate. All my clients get a discount automatically for coming back to me, and that's part of the reason I track it and so forth. But then you can use the rate and the shift in the market to give a credit, the opposite as buying down the rate.
So it's not actually free, just you're gonna pay the down the line, so to speak.
Well, you pay it down the line because you're paying a slightly higher rate than the going market. But if somebody came to me and was like, you can take 6.6 or 6.75 and save $500 a month, or you can go 6.625, save $600 a month and pay $5,000, I'm always going to go the higher one because you recoup it. You don't even need to be in the loan to recoup it. It just automatically makes sense.
It's the same loan balance. They're not taking the fee and adding it to the loan balance. They're compensating with points in a higher rate. So it doesn't increase your loan balance at all.
Very technical and hard to comprehend.
Yeah, you're paying negative points on it, essentially.
Yeah, instead of buying down the rate, you're taking a slightly higher rate.
Yeah.
But the biggest concern clients always have when it comes to a refinance is, well, is now the right time?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, can you save $500 for free right now?
Yeah.
Then it's the right time. Now, if I had to say, oh, pay $5,000 to save $500, you'd be like, well, I have to justify it and how long our rate's going to keep going down.
Yeah.
During COVID, I swear I had clients I would do no cost refis every 6 months. Because they were like, okay, I'll go to 4.99. Okay, I'll go to 4. Oh, now I'll go to 3.
Yeah.
And then the only concern is I'm going back to a 30-year mortgage, but just pay extra and then you're going to pay it off sooner.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to look at it. And any lender who tells you they're just offering you a free refi because that's their service, it's because they're using the rate like I am. They just don't explain it.
Yeah.
And with the condominiumization, it's still possible to do this like free refinance.
If the market, like if you bought 2 months ago and rates didn't change and we're in the same rate environment, you're going to pay.
Yeah, I got one thing. So I have a property that has a single family residence and a DADU. I've had them for a while and I want to sell separately. But I haven't turned them into the condominium yet. So I do can I get the condo piece done and get them on the market before I have to refinance?
This is a good one.
So this is a hard one. So
Yeah.
before you can sell them separately, you have to have 2 different properties.
Before we can close them, we can list them
Yeah, it has to be before the closing
before we
date.
can close them. Yeah.
But okay, here's the problem. You sell the DADU first, and you have a lien against both of them still.
Yeah.
And the DADU, it depends. You've owned them for a long time, so maybe the sale of the DADU would release that entire lien, and you would be fine.
Yeah.
So non-simultaneous sales seem to be the issue because theoretically, let's
If
say
you're
you start to
maxed out.
condoize it, you list it, we time the condoization process so it finishes 5 days prior to closing,
Plus the split.
and we sell
amount.
both of them at the same time, right? There's no issue, right? We just have,
I got my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
yeah, we
But
got
in
5
your
days of
circumstance,
danger.
You've owned them for a long. You probably don't have a high loan balance.
Yeah.
So you might just have to sell one before the other to clear the lien. Otherwise, you can't give somebody a property that has a lien against it.
Yeah. I suppose you could self-clear it too. Like if you ended up with 50K of loan balance, you could throw 50K out of it on a line of credit or something and then pay it back once you sell the other
I
one.
did not understand that part of the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're gonna have to pay off your whole loan once you sell half of it. And there's a high probability that they won't be simultaneous sales unless you like really price them right. Although if you price them right, as in low, they might be simultaneous because you would probably sell both of them quickly with multiple offers and they'd both close in 20 days or so.
Or you could pick, I want to sell this one first, so you're going to refi the other one, rent it out for a year, and then sell that one. You just need a clean title.
Yeah.
So
I
Well, I guess actually thinking about this more, if you got the lender to agree to a partial reconveyance, to split the lines, so then that DADU, the lien is no longer on the DADU. You get that first and then condoize it and then sell it, you would be better off.
Seems like a lot of work
But if
for.
you condoize it and then ask them to do the partial reconveyance, they're gonna say nope, because you're out of your original contract.
Yeah.
What is that process called, you just mentioned?
Partial reconveyance,
Okay, and what is that exactly?
that's where you, so me as a lien holder would have a lien on the entire lot. A partial reconveyance is where you say, oh, I'll only have my lien on 60% of your lot now, so that 40% is owned free and clear, and my lien has changed. So you have to have new title reports, it's separating out the property.
And lenders are happy to do that?
No.
No.
I mean,
No.
it depends on the loan to value.
Yeah.
I mean, if you only have 5% in the equity in the property, they're gonna say no, but if you bought it
Yeah.
10 years ago and you have low leverage, the likelihood is, I mean, there's a whole process on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's website that you can follow to do that. But
And it sounds like they need to consider it. They don't need to grant it, but you do
Yes.
have the right to ask
But if,
for
like
it.
I said, it's like, if you have a high loan to value and they're
Yeah.
using every inch of that property to securitize their loan, the likelihood is less.
Yeah.
Now, it can happen, certainly, but.
Yeah. For all we talk about partial loan reconveyance, I've seen it happen like once. So it's one of those things that theoretically you can do, but practically I just don't see people executing it. Thank you, everybody.